This video contains complete questions for Citizenship Test Canada. Whereas Canada is founded upon principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. This phrase underlines the importance of religious tradition and dignity and worth of human person. Immigrants between the ages of 18 and 54 must have adequate knowledge of English or French. Who is Canada's representative? The sovereign. Which one of the following is not a source of the law present in Canada? U.S. federal law. Under oath of citizenship in Canada, to which person do the Canadian citizens swear allegiance? Sovereign. Through habeas corpus, a person can challenge unlawful detention by the state. It is derived from which law? English common law. The Constitution of Canada was amended in which year? 1982. Who are regulated by the laws in Canada? Individuals and governments. The Constitution of Canada was amended to entrench which Canadian Charter in 1982? Canadian Charter of Right and Freedom. How old is the tradition of ordered liberty that Canada contains? 800. Together with Canadian law that was inherited from the past, Canada also has an 800 years old tradition of ordered liberty, which dates back to the signing of Magna Carta. According to law, which of the following gives a person the right to challenge unlawful detention by the state and imprisonment? Habeas corpus. To become a part of Canada, what is the age limit for a person that must have adequate knowledge of French and English? 18 till 54. Which languages have equal status in Parliament and also throughout the government? English and French. Mobility rights states that Canadians can live and work anywhere they want and that Canadians can enter and leave the country freely. What is the status given to multiculturalism by the Canadian Constitution? It should be celebrated. What does the Constitution of Canada tells about Aboriginal people? They cannot be overruled by it. Which one of these religions has greater rights than Canada? They all are equal. Which of the following states that English and French will be the official languages of Canada? Great Charter of Rights and Freedom. From where did the rights and responsibilities of Canadian citizens come? History. What are the three responsibilities of Canadian citizens? Obeying the law, taking responsibility for oneself and one's family, serving in a jury. Helping in the community and volunteering helps. A. Get everybody involved. B. You make friends and contacts. C. Developing working and social environment. Taking care of the environment is the responsibility of every citizen. According to government, which of the following is above the law? Nobody is above the law. The right to vote comes with a responsibility to vote, which means that every Canadian should vote in. The right to vote comes with a responsibility to vote in federal, provincial, or territorial and local elections. In Canada, serving on a jury is compulsory. Which of the following is prohibited in Canada? Female genital mutilation. In Canada, when is forced marriage of women permitted? Under no circumstances. In Canadian courts, any statement against women due to cultural traditions will be disregarded. In Canada, what is the status of men and women under the law? They are equal. Spousal abuse, forced marriage, honor killing, female genital mutilation all are counted as crime in all circumstances. Which of the following is a noble way to contribute to Canada and an excellent career choice? Serving in the Canadian Forces. The safety of Canada's north is ensured by the Canadian Rangers. Serving in the military and other defending forces in Canada is compulsory. The teenagers who can't join the Canadian Army can become cadet. People who are unable to perform full military services in Canada can perform part-time. Which of the following is the name of the military forces in Canada? Canadian Forces. Serving in any armed forces for Canadian citizens is not compulsory. It is the only constitutional monarchy in North America. Canada. The founding peoples of Canada are A. Aboriginal, B. French, C. British. The Canadian system of government is based on constitutional monarchy. Which of the following is often referred to as the Great Dominion? Canada. Canada is being regarded around the world as strong and free. Canada's institutions uphold a commitment in the British North America Act 1867 about peace, order and good government. Should retain their individuality and each make its contribution to the national character. This was said by John Buchan. The Métis are distinct people of mixed Aboriginal and European ancestry. They came from both French and English-speaking background. Who are Métis people? They are people of mixed Aboriginal and European ancestry. How many groups of people make up the Aboriginals? 3. In which year did Ottawa formally apologize for its treatment of Aboriginal students? 2008. Until which date did the federal government force Aboriginal students to assimilate them into mainstream Canadian culture? 1980. Canadian citizens who are neither Inuit nor Métis are known as First Nation. Thousands of years ago, where did the ancestors of Aboriginal peoples migrated from? Asia. Territorial rights were first guaranteed through the Royal Proclamation of 1763 by King George III. What is the meaning of the word Inuit in the Inuktitut language? The people. Most of the Métis people live in Prairie Province. Inuit people live across the Arctic. Which is considered as Canada's greatest strength? Diversity. According to John Buchan, from where should we learn while cherishing our own special loyalties and traditions? From others' traditions. Anglophones are the people who speak English as their first language. Francophones are the people who speak French as their first language. Today, Acadian culture is a lively part of French-speaking Canada. Quebecers are French-speaking. Majority of French-speaking Canadians belong to Quebec. Which of the following are considered as the official languages of Canada? English and French are the official languages of Canada. In 1604, who began settling in the region which is now called the Maritime Provinces? Acadians. What percentage of Aboriginal peoples are Inuit? 4%. Who are the descendants of the French colonist who began settling in maritime provinces in 1604? Acadians. Today, how many Anglophones are present in Canada? 18 million. The only bilingual province present in Canada is New Brunswick. Today, approximately how many people speak French as their first language? 7 million. During the war between Britain and France in 1755 and 1763, more than two-thirds of the Acadians were deported from their homeland. This period is known as the Great Upheaval. When did the House of Commons recognize that the Quebecois can form a nation within a united Canada? 2006. Canada is also known as the Land of Immigrants. In becoming Canadian citizen, newcomers are expected to embrace Canadian law. The great majority of Canadians identify themselves as Christians. From non-official languages, which is the second most spoken language at home after English? Chinese. Does every person in Canada have the freedom to assimilate his life according to their religion? Yes. According to Canadian law, the marriage of gay and lesbian with each other is allowed. What right does Canada give to gay and lesbians as compared to heterosexual people in Canada? Equal rights. Since 1970, immigrants are most likely to become from Asia. At the very beginning of Canadian history, a large number of Aboriginals died because of the European diseases towards which they lacked immunity. Which of the following were the nomadic peoples who moved from place to place following bison, buffalo, herds? Sioux. In 1759, the British defeated the French in the Battle of the Plains of Abraham in Quebec City, marking the end of France's empire in America. Who was the commander of the British Army who died leading his troops in this battle? Brigadier James Wolfe. When Europeans explored Canada, they found all regions occupied by native people they called as Indians. The remains of the settlement of the Vikings who colonized Newfoundland is L'Anse-aux Meadows. The map of Canada's east coast was first drawn by John Cabot. Who are the first Europeans ever to visit Canada? Vikings. Which part of Canada did Vikings reach first? Newfoundland and Labrador. When did the European exploration led by John Cabot begin? 1497. When Europeans explored Canada, they found all regions occupied by native people they called Indians because the first explorers thought they had reached the East Indies, who made voyages across the Atlantic between 1534 and 1542, claiming the land for King Francis I of France. Later, this expedition also became the reason for Canada. Jacques Cartier. Jacques Cartier heard two captured guides speak the Iroquoian word Canada, which means village. Since when did the name Canada begin to appear on the map of the world? 1550. When did the first European settlement in the north of Florida establish? 1604. The first European settlement was established by which French explorers? Pierre de Monts, Samuel de Champlain. When did the Iroquois and French make peace? 1701. What was the major trade present between French and Aboriginals in the late 18th century? Fur. In 1608, Champlain built a fortress at which city? Quebec City. The French Empire in North America that was built by the French explorer reached from Hudson's Bay south to the Gulf of Mexico. In which battle did the British defeat the French at Quebec City, ending the rule of the French Empire? Battle of Plains of Abraham. In 1670, King Charles II of England granted the Hudson's Bay Company exclusive trading rights over the watershed draining into Hudson Bay. Then, for the next 100 years, the company competed with which traders? Montreal-based. In 1670, who granted the Hudson's Bay Company exclusive trading rights? King Charles II. Following the Battle of the Plains of Abraham at Quebec City, the British renamed the colony as Province of Quebec. The French-speaking Catholic people, who strove to preserve their way of life in the English-speaking Protestant-ruled British Empire, are known as habitants or Canadians. For which purpose did the British Parliament pass the Quebec Act of 1774? To better govern the French Roman Catholic majority. The British Parliament passed the Quebec Act in 1774, which restored the system of law based on both A and B. What benefits did the Quebec Act 1774 give to the Catholic people? Religious freedom. They can hold the public offices. In 1776, 13 British colonies in the south of Quebec declared independence and formed United States. More than 40,000 people loyal to the Crown fled the oppression of the American Revolution to settle in Nova Scotia and Quebec and were declared as Loyalist. Joseph Brant led thousands of which Loyalist Mohawks to Canada? Indian. In 1792, some black Nova Scotians, who were given poor land, moved on to established Freetown, called Sierra Leone. In which part of Canada was the first representative assembly elected in 1758? Nova Scotia. Which of the following constitutional act divided Quebec into Upper and Lower Canada? Constitutional Act of 1791. What are Upper Canada and Lower Canada called, respectively? Ontario, Quebec. The Atlantic colonies in Upper and Lower Canada were collectively called British North America. In which year did the Constitutional Act pass by the British Parliament? 1791. The name Canada became official in which year? 1791. Who was the founder of the City of York, now Toronto? Governor John Graves Simcoe. Which of the following was the first ever province to move towards abolition of slavery in 1793? Upper Canada. When did slavery become totally abolished throughout the British Empire? 1833. When did the buying and selling of slaves become prohibited? 1807. Via which underground pathway did thousands of slaves escape from the United States, follow the North Star and settled in Canada? Railroad. The first ever companies in Canada competed for which trade? Fur. When were the first companies in Canada formed? During French and British regimes. When did the first financial institutions open in Canada? In late 18th and early 19th centuries. In which year did the Montreal Stock Exchange open? 1832. The cities of the Northwest like Edmonton, Langley, and Victoria, these cities were all started as trading posts. For centuries Canada's economy was based on which trade? Natural resources such as fur, timber, fish, etc. Who was the first member of the Canadian Corps born in Ukraine? Corporal Philip Colonial. Victoria Day is celebrated on the Monday preceding May 25th. When did the United States launch an invasion in revenge for the British interference with their shipping? 1812. Which nation helped Canada in the war against America in 1812? British. How many American invaders did Lieutenant Colonel Charles de Salaberry and 460 soldiers, mostly French Canadians, manage to turn back at Chateauguay, south of Montreal, in 1813? 4,000. Where did the Americans burn the Government House and the Parliament buildings in 1813? York. What was the purpose of the War of 1812? For the Canada to remain independent of USA. When did the armed rebellion occur in the area outside Montreal and in Toronto? 1837 to 1838. According to Lord Durham, in which culture did Canadians have to assimilate in order to achieve the quickest way to progress? English speaking. Lord Durham, an English reformer sent to report on the rebellions, recommended that Upper and Lower Canada be merged and given responsible government. In 1840 Upper and Lower Canada were united as the Province of Canada. Which was the first British North American colony to attain full responsible government in 1847 to 1848? Nova Scotia. When did La Fontaine become the head of the first responsible government? 1849. Out of the following people, who became the first head of a responsible government in Canada? Sir Louis Hippolyte La Fontaine. Which act did the British Parliament pass in 1867? British North America Act. From 1864 to 1867, representatives of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and the Province of Canada with British support worked together to establish a new country. Fathers of Confederation. Through British North America Act 1867, in which parts did the old province of Canada split? Ontario and Quebec. Ontario, Quebec together with New Brunswick and Nova Scotia formed a new country called Dominion of Canada. The Dominion of Canada was officially born on July 1, 1867. Every year July 1 is officially celebrated as Canada Day. What system of government was created by the Fathers of Confederation? Federal. Provincial. When did Nunavut become part of the Dominion of Canada? 1999. Sir Leonard Tilley was inspired by which psalm in the Bible which refers to dominion from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth? 72. When did Sir Leonard Tilley, an elected official and father of the Confederation from New Brunswick, 1864. Which of the following is the first Prime Minister of Canada? Sir John Alexander Macdonald. When was Sir John Alexander Macdonald born in Scotland? January 11, 1815. The Parliament has recognized January 11 as Sir John Alexander Macdonald Day. Whose portrait is present on the $10 bill? Sir John Alexander Macdonald. Who led Quebec into Confederation and helped negotiate the entry of the Northwest Territories, Manitoba, and British Columbia into Canada? Sir George Etienne Cartier. Riel is seen by many as a hero and is known as both A and B. Today, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, is considered as which force of Canada? National Police Force. When did Prime Minister Macdonald establish the Northwest Mounted Police, NWMP, to help pacify the Northwest? 1873. When did Canada take over the vast Northwest region from the Hudson's Bay Company? 1869. When Canada took over the vast Northwest region from the Hudson's Bay Company in 1869, which group of peoples of the Red River were not consulted? Métis. In 1871, who decided to join Canada after Ottawa promised to build a railway to the West Coast? British Columbia. Who financed the project of railway to the West Coast, which was built by the European and Chinese laborers? British. American. When did the Government of Canada apologize for the discriminatory policy against the Chinese, including head tax to block the immigration of Chinese? 2006. Who was the first French-Canadian Prime Minister since the Confederation? Sir Wilfrid Laurier. Whose portrait is on the $5 bill? Sir Wilfrid Laurier. From which place did most of the immigrants came to Canada before the First World War? Ukraine. How many American and British immigrants were welcomed by Canada during the economic boom? 1 million. April 9th is celebrated as Vimy Day. When did the Canadian Corps capture Vimy Ridge, with 10,000 killed or wounded, securing the Canadians' reputation? April 1917. Over 7,000 Canadians volunteered to fight in the South African War. Boer War. From 1914 to 1920, Ottawa interned over 8,000 former Austro-Hungarian subjects as enemy aliens in 24 labor camps across Canada, which mainly contained Ukrainian men. How many Canadian people served in the First World War out of the 8 million population? 600,000. How many soldiers sacrificed their lives during the First World War? 60,000. The effort done by women to achieve the right to vote is known as the Women's Suffrage Movement. Who was the founder of the women's suffrage movement? Dr. Emily Stowe. Who was the first woman to practice medicine in Canada? Dr. Emily Stowe. In which year were most of the female citizens aged 21 and over granted the right to vote in federal elections? 1918. In 1921, a woman who was a farmer and teacher became the first woman MP. Her name was Agnes MacPhail. The group of nurses who served in the Royal Canadian Army Medical Corps were called Bluebirds. Which Canadian province was the first to give women the right to vote in elections? Manitoba. When were women finally granted the right to vote in the provincial elections in Quebec? 1940. The federal government of Sir Robert Borden gave right to vote in federal elections to the women who were nurses at the battlefront. On which date do Canadians remember the sacrifices of our veterans and brave fallen in all wars in which the Canadians took part? November 11th. November 11th is known as the Remembrance Day. The poem In Flanders Field, often recited on Remembrance Day, was composed by Colonel John McCrae. When was the Bank of Canada established? In 1934. What is the meaning of the Remembrance Day poppy? To remember the sacrifices of Canadians who have served or died in wars till date. Canada, along with the other former countries of the British Empire, is a part of which organization? The Commonwealth of Nations. In which year were the farmers in Western Canada hit hardest by low grain prices and a terrible drought? 1930. What were the outcomes of the Dirty Thirties? A. Unemployment. B. Bad crops. C. Businesses wiped out. What is the D-Day invasion? Epic invasion of Normandy in northern France on June 6, 1944. Which place did Canadian troops capture during the epic invasion of Normandy in northern France on June 6, 1944? Juno Beach. Approximately how many of the Allied troops were Canadian in the D-Day invasion? 10%. In year 1943 to 44, Canadians took part in the liberation of which nation? Italy. What about the Navy of Canada at the end of the Second World War? Third largest navy in the world. When did the Second World War begin? 1939. How many Canadian soldiers lost their lives serving for Canada in the Second World War? 44,000. How many Canadians and Newfoundlanders served in the Second World War? More than 1 million. In 1941, Canada suffered from the unsuccessful defense of which nation from the Japanese? Hong Kong. In which battle did the Royal Canadian Navy contribute in the Second World War against the German ships? Battle of Atlantic. What began Canada's modern energy industry? Discovery of oil in Alberta in 1947. The Canada and Quebec Pension Plan was introduced in which year? 1965. In which year was the federal government unemployment insurance introduced in Canada? 1940. In which year did Canada achieve the milestone that more than 50% of its people had food, shelter, and clothes? 1951. Who ensures common elements and a basic standard of health? Canada Health Act. Provincial and territorial governments provide funds for public education. In which year did the Canadian troops fight as part of the United Nations forces defending South Korea in the Korean War? 1950 to 1953. In which type of UN missions did Canada take part after World War II? Peacekeeping missions. How many soldiers died in the Korean War? 500. Canada, along with other democratic countries of the West, joined together to form North Atlantic Treaty Organization. What is the outcome of Official Languages ACT, 1969? Guaranteed French and English services in federal government. When was La Francophonie founded? 1970. When was the last rejection for Quebec on a referendum stated? 1995. Quebec experienced an era of rapid change in the 1960s, which is termed as Quiet Revolution. From where did Canada welcome 50,000 refugees in 1975? Vietnam. Who were the 37,000 people who escaped from Soviet tyranny in 1956 and were welcomed by Canada? Hungarians. In which year did the Japanese Canadians get the right to vote? 1948. In which year were the Aboriginals granted the right to vote? 1960. By the 1960s, how many Canadians had origins that were neither British nor French, and took pride in preserving their distinct culture in the Canadian fabric? 1/3. What were the outcomes of better educational opportunities? Women entered professional workforces. Which of the following countries invented basketball? Canada. Who invented basketball? James Naismith. In 1996, at the Olympic Summer Games, who became a world record sprinter and double Olympic gold medalist? Donovan Bailey. Who is the world champion wheelchair racer and Paralympic gold medalist? Chantal Petitclerc. Who began the cross-country run the Marathon of Hope to raise money for cancer research? Terry Fox. Which of the following is Canada's best-known contribution to visual arts? The Group of Seven. From which team did the great hockey player Wayne Gretzky play between 1979 to 1988? Edmonton Oilers. Which of the following is a famous Canadian writer? Pauline Johnson. Which of the following are Canadian musicians? Sir Ernest Macmillan and Healy Willan. Who were the pioneers of modern abstract art in the 1950s? Les Automatists. Canadian football is a popular game that differs in a number of ways from American football. Professional teams in the Canadian Football League, CFL, compete for which championship cup? Grey. Gerhard Herzberg, a refugee from Nazi Germany, John Polanyi, Sidney Altman, Richard E. Taylor, Michael Smith, and Bertram Brockhaus were? Scientist. Who discovered the insulin hormone to treat diabetes that has saved 16 million lives worldwide? Sir Frederick Banting. Who invented the first cardiac pacemaker? Hops. Who is famous for inventing the worldwide system of standard time zone? Sir Sandford Fleming. A wireless communication company in Canada known for its most famous invention called? BlackBerry. Who invented the Canadarm, a robotic arm used in outer space? Spar Aerospace. Which of the following is not a Canadian invention? Electric light bulb. Which of the following is the key fact of Canada's system of government? A. Canada is a federal state. B. It has parliamentary democracy. C. Constitutional monarchy. Which act defines the responsibilities of the federal and provincial government? British North America and Constitutional Act 1867. The responsibilities of the federal and provincial governments were defined in 1867 in the British North America Act, now known as the Constitution Act, 1867. National and international concerns. The provinces in Canada are governed by the Legislative Assemblies. Federal government sits in Ottawa. To grant the right to vote, a person must be 18 years old. The responsibility of healthcare comes under provincial government. Which of the following are parts of the Parliament? A. Sovereign. B. Senate. C. House of Commons. In the federal government, who selects the cabinet minister and is responsible for the operation and policy of the government? Senators. How are members of Parliament selected? They are elected by the voters in their local constituencies or districts. To become a law in Canada, a bill should A. Be passed by House of Commons. B. Be given royal assent. C. Be passed by the Senate. How many times should a bill be read in the House of Commons before it becomes law? 3 times. Which of the following is not a part of the Parliament? Lieutenant governors. Which part of the Parliament has members appointed by the Governor-General and serves until the age of 75? The Senate. Who represents the sovereign in the provincial legislature? Lieutenant governors. In the Parliament, senators are appointed by the Governor-General. Cabinet ministers have to resign if they succeed in a non-confidence vote. When do the elections for the members of the House of Commons take place? After every 4 years. In Canada's parliamentary democracy, the people elect members to the House of Commons in Ottawa and to the provincial and territorial legislatures. These representatives are responsible for A. Passing laws. B. Approving and monitoring expenditures. C. Keeping the government accountable. Who grants royal assent to the bill on the behalf of the sovereign? Governor-General. In Canada, a debate in the Parliament to make something a law is generally called bills. Who is the head of the state? Sovereign. Who is the head of the government? Prime Minister. The sovereign is represented in Canada by the Governor. What time period is the Governor-General appointed for? 5 years. In each province, who has a role similar to that of the Prime Minister? Premier. Who has a role similar to that of the Governor-General in federal government? Lieutenant Governor. Governor-General in Canada is appointed by the Sovereign on the advice of the Prime Minister. Who has no political role in Canadian democracy? Sovereign. Who is the leader of the legislatures for all the provinces? Sovereign. As head of the Commonwealth, the sovereign links Canada to how many other nations that cooperate to advance social, economic, and cultural progress? 53. Who represents sovereign in each of the 10 provinces and serves for 5 years? Lieutenant Governor. No bill can become a law in Canada until it has been passed by the House of Commons and the Senate and has received NOC. Federal elections must be held on the third Monday of October every 4 years following recent election. Canada is divided into how many electoral districts, also known as ridings or constituencies? 308. An electoral district is a geographical area represented by a member of the Parliament. Who represents every electoral district in the House of Commons? Member of the Parliament. The count of people that can run for office from a single district is as many as can. Those Canadian citizens can run in the federal elections who are 18 years old or more. In a federal election, the Canadians vote for members of the House of Commons. How many districts are there in Canada? 308. How many members of the House of Commons are elected through each voting? 308. How can a person vote on a day which is not the voting day? through advance polls or special ballots. Can a Canadian citizen be added to the voters list on the election day? Yes. In Canada, voting details are passed to the citizens through mail. The voters' lists used during the federal elections and referendums are produced from the National Register of Electors by a neutral agency of the Parliament called Elections Canada. What does the secret ballot mean? No one watches you vote and how you vote. The piece of paper you vote on is known as a ballot. If the party in power holds at least half of the seats in the House of Commons, that party is referred to as majority government. If a majority of the members of the House of Commons vote against a major government decision, the party in power is promoted. Who are responsible for running the federal government departments? Cabinet ministers. Who are responsible for governing the provincial government departments? Cabinet ministers. The government ministers, along with prime ministers, are called the cabinet. After the election, the Governor General will ask which party to form the government. Party with greater seats. Today, there are three major political parties currently represented in the House of Commons: the Conservative Party, the Democrats, and the Liberals Party. What should you mark in the circle next to the name of the candidate of your choice? X. Canadian government ensures that your vote remains secret. Which of the following confirms that your name is on the voters list and states when and where you vote? Voter information card. Which of the following is the responsibility of the federal government? National defense. Which of the following is the responsibility of the municipal government? Social and community health. Municipal governments usually have a council that passes laws. These laws only affect the local community and are called bylaw. The council usually includes a councillors or alderman and a mayor. Which of the following has the role to settle disputes, disagreements, or conflicts? The court. Which of the following is not governed by the law? Nobody. In Canada, the law has a purpose which includes a. Giving order to society. B. Helping settle disputes. C. Expressing Canadian values and beliefs. Every citizen's legal rights must be respected by the Canadian government at all times. Our judicial system is founded on the presumption of innocence in criminal matters, meaning everyone is innocent until proven guilty. Canada is governed by an organized system of laws. These laws are the written rules intended to guide people in our society. They are made by elected representatives. Which of the following is considered as the highest authority court? The Supreme Court. Which of the following court is concerned with family disputes? Family courts. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, enforces Federal laws. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, serves as the provincial police in all provinces and territories except Ontario and Quebec. Which of the following are the only provinces of Canada that have their own police force? Ontario and Quebec. The police are there to enforce the law and keep people safe. If one can't afford to have a lawyer in Canada when charged with a crime, then you will be provided with one. If a Canadian citizen has to enter into legal action, then the person should seek advice from lawyer. The crown has been the symbol of the state in Canada for over 400 years. Canada has been a constitutional monarchy in its own right since the Confederation in 1867, during Queen Victoria's reign. She has been the Queen of Canada since 1952, marked her Golden Jubilee in 2002, and celebrated her Diamond Jubilee in 2012. Queen Elizabeth II. The red-white pattern of the Canadian flag is derived from the Royal Military College, Kingston. The founding year of the red-white pattern of the Canadian flag is 1876. What does the red and white color in the Canadian flag show? France and England. Canadian flag consists of which colors? Red and white. A new Canadian flag was raised for the first time in 1965. Which of the following is our official royal flag? Union Jack. What had been the colors of France and England since the Middle Ages and the national colors of Canada since 1921? Red and white. The Canadian red ensign served as the Canadian flag for about 100 years. Which is Canada's best-known symbol? Maple leaf. Maple leaves were first adopted as a symbol by French Canadians in 1700s. Which of the following symbol is carved into the headstones of our fallen soldiers buried overseas and in Canada? Maple leaf. Maple leaf has been a symbol and part of the Canadian military uniforms and insignia since 1850s. For how many years was the lily flower a symbol of French royalty and became part of the Quebec flag in 1948? 1,000 years. It is said that the lily flower, fleur-de-lis, was adopted by the French king in the year 496. When did Quebec adopt its own flag, based on the cross and the fleur-de-lis? 1948. What is the meaning of the word fleur-de-lis in French? Lily flower. At the Confederation, which symbol is included in the Canadian red ensign? Lily flower. In Latin, amari usque ad mare means from sea to sea. When did Canada adopt the official coat of arms and a national motto as an expression of national pride? After First World War. The Canadian arms consist of symbols of England, France, Scotland and Ireland. The Peace Tower was completed in 1927. The Peace Tower was made in the memory of First World War. The Memorial Chamber of Peace Tower contains Books of Remembrance. In which style is the Quebec National Assembly built? French Second Empire. The only original part remaining in the Canadian Parliament is Library. Which of the following building in Canada was completed in the 1860s? Parliament Building. The memorial chamber within the tower contains the Books of Remembrance, which has the names of the soldiers who died in war. Which of the following is the national winter sport? Hockey. Which of the following is Canada's most popular spectator sport? Hockey. Ice hockey was founded in Canada in 1800s. The National Hockey League plays for the Championship Stanley Cup, donated by Lord Stanley. Which is the second most popular sport in Canada? Football. Which sports was introduced by Scotland? Curling. The Clarkson Cup, established in 2005 by Adrian Clarkson, the 26th Governor-General, is awarded for women's hockey. The National Hockey League plays for the championship known as Stanley Cup. Which of the following is Canada's official summer sport? Lacrosse. Lacrosse, an ancient sport, was first played by the Aboriginals. Which of the following sports have the most registered players in Canada? Soccer. What was adopted centuries ago as a symbol of the Hudson's Bay Company? The beaver. Which symbol can be found on a 5-cent coin? The beaver. The beaver became an emblem of the Saint Jean-Baptiste Society, a French-Canadian patriotic association, in 1834. Which of the following symbols can be seen on the coats of arms of cities such as Montreal and Toronto? The beaver. Parliament passed the Official Language Act in 1969. Which of the following was proclaimed as the national anthem? O Canada. Canada was proclaimed as the national anthem of Canada in 1980. Canada, the national anthem was first sung in Quebec City. How do the French and English Canadians sing the words of the national anthem? They sing the words of their language. The royal anthem of Canada is God Save the Queen. In Canada, where is the equal status given to the English and French? Everywhere. What is the age limit for the applicants applying for Canadian citizenship who must have an adequate knowledge of English and French? 18 to 54. English speakers, Anglophones, and French speakers, Francophones, have lived together in partnership and creative tension for more than 300 years. Canada started its own honor system with the Order of Canada in 1967. Before starting its own honor system with the Order of Canada in 1967, which honor system did Canada use? British honor system. The nomination of any Canadian for Canadian honor can be done by any Canadian. Which is the highest honor available for Canadians? Victoria Cross. The Victoria Cross is awarded for the act of conspicuous bravery. Since 1854, how many people have been awarded with the Victoria Cross to date? 96. Who was the first Canadian to be awarded the Victoria Cross for his actions in the Crimean War? Lieutenant Alexander Robert Dunn. Who was the first black man to be awarded the Victoria Cross? Able Seaman William Hall. Who was the last Canadian to be awarded the Victoria Cross from 1945 to date? Lieutenant Robert Hampton Gray. Good Friday is celebrated on the Friday immediately preceding Easter Sunday. Feast of St. John the Baptist is celebrated on June 24th. Remembrance Day is celebrated on November 11th. Sir Wilfrid Laurier Day is celebrated on November 20th. Christmas Day is celebrated on December 25th. Boxing Day is celebrated on December 26th. Labor Day is celebrated on the first Monday of September. Vimy Day is celebrated on April 9th. Canada Day is celebrated on July 1st. When did Canada enact free trade with the United States? 1988. Who became a partner in 1994 in the broader North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, with over 444 million people and over $1 trillion in merchandise trade in 2008? Mexico. Canada is a part of which group of leading industrialized countries? G8. Today, where does Canada's economy lie among the largest economies in the world? Among top 10. Canada's economy mostly depends upon trading. How many types of industries does Canada's economy include? 3. It is one of the largest trading partners of Canada. United States. Canadians and Americans cross the border every year and in safety, which is now traditionally regarded as the world's longest undefended border. How much of Canada's exports are destined for the United States? 3/4. What proportion of Canadian workers belong to the service industries? 75%. Even today, the major exports of Canada contain which commodities? Natural resources. Canada is which largest country in the world? Second. Which ocean is found in the west of Canada? Pacific. How many ocean lines surround Canada? 3. Along the southern edge of Canada lies the Canada-United States boundary. How many distinct regions does Canada contain? 5. Which Canadian province lies in the East region? Atlantic Province. Which of the following is the capital of Canada? Ottawa. Ottawa was chosen as the capital in 1857. Ottawa was chosen as the capital of Canada in 1857 by Queen Victoria. Today, which of the following is the fourth largest metropolitan area of Canada? Ottawa. The area that surrounds Ottawa is known as the National Capital Region. How many provinces does Canada consist of? 10. How many territories does Canada consist of? 3. Canada population is around 34 million people. The Atlantic region contains how many provinces? 4. Newfoundland and Labrador is the oldest colony of the British Empire. Which of the following is the smallest province of the Atlantic region? Prince Edward Island. Which of the following is considered to be the gateway to Canada? Nova Scotia. Which of the following is the home of Canada's largest naval base as well as contains the largest east coast? Nova Scotia. Which of the following is the only official bilingual province, and contains about 1/3 of the population living and working in French? New Brunswick. Which of the following contains the second largest river system on North America's Atlantic coastline, St. John River System? New Brunswick. Which of the following is the largest city in the Atlantic region of Canada present in New Brunswick? St. John. Which cities have the most easterly points in North America and also have their own time zone? Newfoundland and Labrador. Which of the following is the home to over 700 annual festivals, including the spectacular military tattoo in Halifax? Nova Scotia. Which of the following is a story about the adventures of a little red-headed orphan girl set in Prince Edward Island by Lucy Maud Montgomery? Anne of Green Gables. Which is the most populous Atlantic province? Nova Scotia. Prince Edward Island, PEI, is the smallest province, known for its beaches, red soil and agriculture, especially potatoes. What fraction of the population in New Brunswick, the only officially bilingual province in Canada, lives and works in 1/3? On which of the following mountains is New Brunswick situated? Appellation. Atlantic region of Canada contains the following provinces: Newfoundland and Labrador, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, and Nova Scotia. The Central Canada region contains how many provinces? 2. Which of the following is Canada's largest producer of hydroelectricity? Quebec. Which of the following is Canada's second largest city and the world's second largest, mainly French-speaking city in the world after Paris? Montreal. Which of the following is the largest city of Canada as well as country's main financial centre? Toronto. How many lakes are located between Ontario and the United States? 5. Ontario contains what percentage of Canadian citizens overall? 33%, one-third. What fraction of the people in Canada live in cities and towns near the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence River in southern Quebec and Ontario? One-half. Which of the following is the largest freshwater lake in the world? Lake Superior. How many people live in Quebec, especially along or near the St. Lawrence River? 8 million. Which of the following is the capital of Alberta? Edmonton. Which of the following province was once known as the breakfast of the world? Saskatchewan. Which of the following is the home of the training academy of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police? Regina. Which of the following is the headquarters of the mining industry and an important educational, research and technology centre? Saskatoon. Which Canadian province produces most of the oil and gas for Canada? Alberta. Prairie provinces contains the most fertile farmlands in the world. Alberta has 5 national parks, including Banff National Park, established in 1885. Which of the following province contains the largest number of Aboriginal population? Manitoba. Saskatchewan, once known as the breadbasket of the world and the wheat province, contains what fraction of the total arable land in Canada? 40%. Which of the following is the capital city of British Columbia? Victoria. Which of the following port is the gateway to Asia Pacific? Port of Vancouver. Which of the following is a tourist center and headquarters of the Navy's Pacific Fleet? Victoria. How many provincial parks does British Columbia have? 600. About one-half of all the goods produced in British Columbia are forestry products. British Columbia, BC, on the Pacific coast, is Canada's westernmost province, with a population of 4 million. Which of the following is the capital of Yukon Territory? Whitehorse. Which of the following region is often referred to as the Land of Midnight Sun? Northern Territories. Which of the following has long cold winters and short cool summers? Northern Territories. Which of the following is called the diamond capital of North America? Yellowknife. Which is the second largest river system in North America? The Mackenzie River System. What fraction of Canada's total land mass is covered by the Northwest Territories, Nunavut and Yukon? One-third. The Northwest Territories, Nunavut and Yukon contain 1/3 of Canada's landmass with a population of 100,000. Which of the following mountains is located in Yukon and is also considered the highest mountain in Canada? Logan. When was Nunavut, meaning our land in Inuktitut language, established from the eastern part of Northwest Territories? 1999. Thousands of miners came to the Yukon during the gold rush of the 1890s. Which province has a population of about 85% Inuit, and Inuktitut is the official and first language in schools there? Nunavut. Which animal is the symbol of North of Canada? Caribou. Which of the following is a part of the Canadian Forces Reserve, militia? Canadian Rangers. On which automobile do the Rangers travel in winter from the Resolute to the magnetic North Pole? Snowmobiles.